Captain Jack Havoc sprawled in his command chair, boots propped on the console of the merchant vessel Inevitable Bad Decision. The ship's name had been a drunk impulse purchase, much like the vessel itself, but over the years it had proven strangely prophetic. "Marcus, please tell me we're not actually going to deliver this shipment of synthesized hot sauce to the Globians," Jack called out, flicking a rubber band toward the ceiling. "Their entire species is allergic to capsaicin." Marcus Teller, ship's navigator and Jack's long-suffering voice of reason, didn't bother looking up from his station. That's precisely why they're paying triple market rate. Apparently, it's become the galaxy's hottest club drug. Small amounts cause mild hallucinations, and large amounts of violent flatulence and religious experiences, often simultaneously. Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Fair enough. Who am I to judge? Set course for Glob." The bridge of the Inevitable Bad Decision wasn't much to look at, a cobbled-together collection of mismatched equipment from at least 7 different species technology. But it worked, mostly, and that was the story of human integration into the galactic community in a nutshell. Humanity had stumbled into faster-than-light travel entirely by accident when Dr. Eleanor Wright spilled coffee on her quantum calculator while trying to optimize delivery and rates for pizza franchises. The rest of the galaxy found humans adorable, quaint, harmless. Captain, incoming transmission, called Zoe Park, their communications specialist. Unlike the rest of the crew, Zoe actually seemed competent, which made her presence aboard the Bad Decision something of a mystery. "If it's the Arcturian Customs Authority again, tell them we absolutely did not smuggle those pandas. They stowed away all on their own." "It's not customs," Zoe said, her voice suddenly serious. "It's a distress signal. From New Helena colony." The rubber band in Jack's hand snapped. New Helena was a small human settlement on the edges of disputed space, and not strategically important, resource-rich, or even particularly interesting. "Put it through," Jack said, swinging his feet off the console. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a dust-covered man with wild eyes. "To any human vessels, we are under attack. They came out of nowhere. They're slaughtering everyone, saying we're static interrupted the message. Test subjects. This isn't a raid, it's a laboratory experiment to them. They call themselves the Vrax. The message cut off entirely." Jack's previously lackadaisical posture had vanished. The bridge fell silent. "And Marcus, plot a course to New Helena, a full burn." His voice was ice-cold. "Captain," Marcus said carefully, "we're a merchant vessel, unarmed. If this is a serious military action, we're the closest human ship. Period. Get us there now." As the Inevitable Bad Decision changed course, a peculiar expression settled on Captain Jack Havoc's face, the look of someone who just realized they might have the chance to show the galaxy exactly how misnamed humans' reputation for harmlessness truly was. The Inevitable Bad Decision dropped out of hyperspace with all the grace of a drunk hippo attempting ballet. Alarms blared as the ship's ancient stabilizers struggled to compensate. "Wow," Jack muttered, gazing at the view screen. "That's not good." New Helena colony, once a bustling outpost of 5,000 souls, now resembled a kicked anthill. Plumes of smoke rose from craters that pockmarked the landscape. "Piquante manplu. Decent. Feudal. Like then." The colony's main dome had been surgically breached in multiple locations. No emergency beacons pinged. No ships fled, just silence. "Life signs?" Jack asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. Zoe's fingers danced over her console, face grim. Wait. One human biosignature. Faint. Eastern quadrant of the research facility. "Take us down, Marcus." Nice and quiet. "Captain," Marcus protested. "Protocol states. The protocol can kiss my exceptionally toned posterior. Someone's alive down there." The landing was rougher than usual, which was saying something. Jack, Marcus, and Zoe emerged onto Helena's surface in environmental suits, pulse rifles clutched awkwardly in inexperienced hands. "Remind me why we even have these," Marcus whispered, nearly dropping his weapon. Because I won a poker game against that Orion arms dealer, Jack replied. Though I'm starting to think the fact they were perfectly legal, no questions asked might have been a slight exaggeration. The colony's central plaza told the story. The bodies lay where they had fallen: men, women, a few children, but something was off about the scene. These weren't just killed, Zoe said, kneeling beside one victim. They were dissected. Methodically. Over here. Marcus called from a partially collapsed research building. I found our survivor. They discovered her huddled in an environmental control closet, clutching a data crystal and a homemade flamethrower fashioned from lab equipment. Professor Ellie Morgan, according to her singed ID badge, had the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen things no human should. You're too late, she rasped. They took samples, categorized our responses, said we displayed fascinating pain thresholds for such an underdeveloped species. Jack helped her to her feet. Who did this? They called themselves the Vrax'nar, highly evolved, they claimed. Said humans represented an ideal control group for their biological weapons research. She laughed bitterly. Apparently we're physiologically similar to their primary enemy, but expendable enough for live testing. A shadow passed overhead. Through the shattered dome, a sleek vessel descended all cruel angles and weapon ports. Its hull bore markings that matched fragments scattered throughout the colony. They're back, Ellie whispered. For follow-up studies. The ship broadcasted a message, automatically translated by their suits. Attention, human vessel. Your presence is unexpected but fortuitous. Please maintain position for collection and processing. Your cooperation will be noted in our research. Jack's face hardened as he looked at the devastation around them. Marcus, remember how I'm always saying we should avoid unnecessary complications? Every single day, Captain. Well, I'm thinking it might be time for a necessary complication. Jack keyed his comm. Bad decision. Prepare for emergency extraction before to beam up. As they sprinted back to their ship, plasma fire began to rain down, methodically boxing them in with scientific precision. They're hurting us, Ellie gasped. Standard Vrax'nar collection protocol. Jack flashed a smile that contained zero humor. Let's show them humans don't herd well. The inevitable bad decision limped into Earth's orbital defense perimeter, trailing smoke and sporting several new ventilation holes that weren't in the original design. Their escape from New Helena had involved 3 hyperspace jumps, 1 faked reactor meltdown, and Jack's surprisingly effective throw-everything-not bolted-down-out the airlock distraction technique. I still can't believe that worked, Marcus muttered as they were escorted through the gleaming halls of United Terran Command. You literally confused an advanced alien race with a cloud of expired protein bars and toilet paper. Sometimes the most sophisticated response is complete nonsense, Jack replied sagely. It's the human way. UTC headquarters was a stark contrast to the ramshackle merchant vessel, all polished surfaces and quiet efficiency. Their ragtag group, still smelling faintly of smoke and fear, drew curious glances as they were hustled into a high-security briefing room. General Thaddeus Brooks, a man who looked like he'd been born in a military uniform, reviewed their report with increasing darkness in his expression. And you're certain they referred to humans specifically as test subjects? He asked Professor Morgan. She nodded grimly. Their lead researcher, I believe the name translated as Specimen Collector Kret, said humans represented gloriously consistent baseline metrics for pain response and organ functionality. They were quite thorough. The general exchanged glances with his aide, who quietly left the room. Captain Havoc, you and your crew have done a great service bringing this information to us. We'll handle it from here. Jack stood his ground. With all due respect, General, I saw what they did. I want in. The door hissed open before Brooks could respond. The woman who entered moved with the liquid grace of a predator, her dark skin marked with what appeared to be ceremonial scarification. 4 equally lethal-looking individuals flanked her. Commander Diana Reynolds. The general introduced her. She'll be handling the Vrax'nar situation. Call me Doomsday. the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Everyone does. Jack raised an eyebrow. Cheerful nickname. I earned it. She turned to General Brooks. The sword is ready, sir. Just give the word. Professor Morgan looked between them. Sword? I've never heard of any military division called. You wouldn't have. Doomsday interrupted. The Strategic Warfare Operations and Response Division doesn't officially exist. General Brooks sighed heavily. Captain Havoc, what I'm about to tell you requires Omega-level clearance. When humanity joined the galactic community, we made a strategic decision to downplay certain aspects of our nature. Jack blinked. You mean? We'd been sandbagging the entire galaxy. Doomsday cut in with obvious relish, being the harmless newcomers while maintaining capabilities that would make most species lose control of their various excretory functions. The general nodded. Commander Reynolds leads a special task force of individuals with unique talents. The kind of talents that made our diplomatic corps nervous about first contact. As if on cue, one of Doomsday's team, a lanky man with a perpetual smirk, produced a combat knife and began balancing it on one finger. Another team member, a woman with Arctic eyes, caused the room's temperature to noticeably drop when she smiled. The Vrax'nar believed they found an easy test subject species, Doomsday said, examining a tactical display of the attack site. Instead, they've stumbled across the one thing the galactic community has been lucky enough to avoid until now. And what's that? Ellie asked. Doomsday's smile was terrifying in its genuine warmth. Humans with a justifiable reason to get really, really nasty. Let me get this straight, Jack said, staring at the holographic battle plan hovering above the war room table. Your grand strategy is to wait. What exactly are we looking at? The war room of the Sword Division resembled a museum of human conflict more than a modern military installation. Ancient weapons lined the walls, everything from Roman gladi to Revolutionary War muskets. A tattered flag bearing a skull and crossbones hung beside what appeared to be a genuine Viking battle axe. Commander Doomsday Reynolds gestured to the rotating display of the Vrax'nar homeworld. Standard approach won't work. The Vrax'nar have monitored enough of our current military doctrine to predict conventional tactics. So instead we're going with completely insane tactics, Marcus asked, squinting at the plan. Precisely. Doomsday beamed like a teacher whose slowest student finally grasped division. Project Antiquity. We fight them using methods so archaic and illogical that their prediction algorithms will have catastrophic failure. Professor Morgan leaned forward. You want to attack an advanced alien civilization using warfare techniques from human history? The older and more ridiculous, the better, confirmed a burly sword operative named Gunnar, who was casually sharpening what appeared to be a medieval morning star. Psychological warfare is half the battle. The Vrax'nar pride themselves on their logical, scientific approach, Doomsday explained. Their entire species evolved around predictive modeling. Our standard military doctrine is actually based on game theory and statistical optimization stuff they excel at. But this, she gestured to an image of Mongolian horse archers. This will break their brains. Jack pointed to one section of the plan. Are those bagpipes? Psychological warfare, Gunnar repeated solemnly. Nothing terrifies like a surprise bagpipe attack. The strategic meeting devolved further as increasingly absurd battle plans were proposed, evaluated, and most disturbingly approved. Trojan horse gambit for their orbital platform. Approved. Viking berserker drop troops. Definitely approved. Roman testudo formation, but with energy shields. Love it. Approved. Cow catapults. Let's mark that as a maybe. Their allied species representatives looked on in growing horror. Admiral Z. Torx of the Galactic Confederation finally erupted. This is madness. You cannot defeat the most sophisticated military force in the quadrant using prehistoric nonsense. Doomsday smiled pleasantly. Admiral, are you familiar with the Battle of Agincourt? I am not versed in your planet's minor skirmishes. Heavily outnumbered English forces defeated French knights using mud and pointy sticks. or the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 Spartans held off a force of thousands. Primitive coincidences, Z. Torx dismissed. That's the beauty of it, Jack realized, a slow grin spreading across his face. The Vrax'nar think like you do that logical. Advanced approaches always win. They'll never expect us to deliberately choose inferior technology and chaotic tactics. We're going to fight them like absolute lunatics, Doomsday confirmed cheerfully, because that's humanity's secret weapon. When backed into a corner, we don't get more logical, we get weird and scary creative. The preparations that followed would have given any military historian an aneurysm. Modern soldiers trained with ancient weapons. Combat shuttles were disguised as primitive sailing vessels. Someone requisitioned 300 Viking shields and a bagpipe regiment. And through it all, the alien allies watched with growing concern as humanity gleefully embraced what they called tactical regression, innovation, and what everyone else called completely unhinged warfare. Then, the human assault fleet materialized above Vrax'nar Prime with all the subtlety of a supernova. But it wasn't the fleet's arrival that caused the Vrax'nar orbital defense grid to momentarily glitch in confusion, it was the appearance. "Are they receiving our visual feed correctly?" asked Supreme Commander Kret of the Vrax'nar Defense Force. "Those cannot possibly be wooden sailing vessels in space." They were, in fact, exactly that, or rather, high-tech warships camouflaged to look like ancient Earth naval vessels, complete with holographic sails and digital cannons disguised as 18th century artillery. "The humans appear to be playing music?" his lieutenant reported, bewilderment evident in his normally clinical tone. The bagpipes hit first, an unholy wail that somehow penetrated even the vacuum of space through targeted audio transmissions. Then came the war drums, the Viking horns, a cacophony of battlefield sounds from across human history, all scientifically calibrated to hit Vrax'nar hearing at its most sensitive frequencies. "They've gone mad," Kret declared, as the first wave of attack pods disguised as Greek triremes began their approach. They prepare the predictive defense arrays. But the predictive arrays, designed to calculate trajectories based on logical combat algorithms, failed spectacularly as human fighters executed maneuvers based on the flight patterns of medieval falconry. On the bridge of the flagship, inevitable bad decision, now improbably upgraded with military-grade weapons systems and painted to resemble HMS Victory, Jack Havoc watched the chaos unfold. "I can't believe it's actually working," he muttered to Marcus, who was dressed inexplicably in a pirate costume complete with eye patch and parrot drone. "The Vrax'nar defense grid is collapsing," Zoe reported from her station. "Their systems can't compute our attack patterns because there are no patterns. We're literally fighting like drunk historical reenactors." Doomsday's voice crackled over the comms. Phase 2 initiated. Deploying the Trojan horse. A massive cargo ship outfitted to look like an actual wooden horse drifted seemingly dead in space toward the Vrax'nar's main research station. As predicted, the scientifically curious aliens tracted it aboard for study. The moment it cleared their shields, the horse disgorged 200 sword operatives dressed in historical warrior garb from every human era. "The Romans have breached the Senate," came the first report, as soldiers in Centurion armor with energy shield scooter stormed the station's command center. "The Vikings have taken the lower decks. Valhalla awaits." But not today. Another team, berserkers wielding gravity-enhanced battle axes, secured the engine room. On the planet's surface, the Vrax'nar military found themselves facing humans employing Zulu pincer movements, Mongol horseback archery tactics, on hovercycles, and most confusingly a Scottish Highland charge complete with kilts and claymores. In the central command hub, Doomsday herself confronted Supreme Commander Kret, who was frantically trying to make sense of the madness. "Your tactics defy all logic," he hissed. "Your weapons are primitive. Your strategies are chaotic. You cannot possibly defeat a superior species this way." Doomsday smiled, twirling an electromagnetic spear modeled after a Roman pilum. "That's humanity's secret, Commander. We already tried logic. We perfected it. Then we realized sometimes the best way to win isn't to be better at the game, it's to flip the board entirely." She activated the global communication system to address all Vrax'nar simultaneously. People of Vrax'nar Prime, you sought to use humans as test subjects. You dissected our colonists to study our pain thresholds. Well, congratulations, you've discovered something about humans today. We are the species that spread a substance called peanut butter on our food despite knowing it can kill some of us. We keep animals that could maul us as pets. We jump out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun. And when someone threatens our existence, we don't respond with calculated logic, we respond with creative extinction. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we've shown you prehistoric warfare. Tomorrow we might decide to get really creative. The choice is yours. Within an hour, the Vrax'nar surrender was complete. News of the Vrax'nar surrender spread through the galactic community faster than a politician's excuses after a tax scandal. Security footage of humans in gladiatorial armor, charging plasma cannons and Napoleonic infantry formations executing perfect flanking maneuvers became the most watched entertainment across 17 star systems. The Galactic Confederation convened an emergency session, with representatives from all major species gathered to discuss what many were now calling the human question. They defeated the Vrax'nar. The Vrax'nar, using pointed sticks and psychological warfare, stammered the Sundari ambassador, a species known for their unflappable calm. Admiral Z. Torix nodded gravely. I warned you all when they joined the Confederation. Any species that survived multiple attempts at self-annihilation was not to be underestimated. In the observer's gallery, Jack Havoc watched the proceedings with amusement, sipping from a flask of what he claimed was just water, probably. They're terrified of us now, Marcus noted, watching the ambassadors argue. Good, Professor Morgan said firmly. Fear is an appropriate response to what we're capable of. As the session concluded, the diplomatic corps invited Captain Havoc to address the assembly, a gesture more about keeping him visible than actual respect. Jack approached the podium with his characteristic swagger, cleared his throat, and gazed out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Distinguished beings, exalted whatnots, and everyone else. I'm not a philosopher or a diplomat. I'm just a guy who delivers questionable cargo to dubious clients. But I've learned something about humans that perhaps you should know. He paused, unusually thoughtful. Humanity isn't special because we're smarter or stronger, or even more ruthless. We're dangerous because we're adaptable. We're the species that makes deadly sports out of survival skills, that turns poisons into cuisine, that weaponizes kindness just as easily as we weaponize anger. Jack gestured toward the display showing the aftermath of the Vrax'nar conflict. The Vrax'nar thought they could study human pain. They couldn't comprehend that pain is what taught us to be creative. Every human adaptation from fire to spacecraft came from trying to avoid some form of suffering. We're not logical about survival, we're passionately, messily committed to it. He smiled, but there was steel beneath it. So here's some free advice from humanity. Trade with us, joke with us, share knowledge with us, but never, ever back us into a corner. Because that's when we get really creative, and as the Vrax'nar learned, you really don't want to be on the receiving end of human creativity. As Jack returned to his crew, the inevitable bad decision received clearance for immediate departure, along with a suspiciously generous fuel stipend and several diplomatic requests to please vacation literally anywhere else. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans weren't just another species. They were walking disasters waiting for a reason to happen, best handled with respectful distance and absolutely no surprise dissections.